Hey everyone and welcome. You're listening to the first episode of Turn Zero Drive Home Edition. This is a solo Marvel Snap podcast where I talk about the latest info that you need before you start the first turn of a game while I drive home from work. I'm your host August, and let's drive home. So a little bit about me before we start. If you don't know who I am, my name is August. I started playing this game about in the Zabu season, so almost 2-3 years ago now. I'm fairly active in the official Marvel Snap Discord, as well as a content writer for Snap.fan. So if you're familiar with Marvel Snap, you're definitely familiar with SnapFan. They're the website that has all the latest data mines every patch. So if you're looking for information about future cards and future bundles, that's where you go. So we also have the articles there that talk about everything that's going on in Marvel Snap, such as new cards or new events. I myself typically do articles about reviewing new seasons as a whole, as well as doing interviews with winners from Marvel Snap's official tournament series, the Golden Gauntlet. For today's episode, though, I just wanted to dive into the latest change in Marvel Snap's balance from today's OTA. So, this would be the OTA that they gave us the notes for a couple days ago due to the Golden Gauntlet World Championship happening this weekend, this Saturday. Since there was the championship on Saturday, they wanted to make sure all the competitors had the information early enough that they could still get their deck list submitted, change a few things, test, tweaks, all that. So let's just look at the first change here. So we've got Debris. Debris used to be a 3-3 with on reveal, add a rock to each other location for both players. And now it says it is a 3-7 on reveal, add a rock to each other location. The big change there being removing the for both players clause. So no longer is Debris a clog card. The rocks will only show up on your side of the board. Okay, as a clog lover myself, this one hurt because I definitely like the ability to attack the other player's board. And that's the kind of strategy that Marvel Snap and Second Dinner seem to be removing, or at least nerfing really hard over the last, year. I think the biggest change to that strat was Professor X. When we used to be able to just lock down a whole lane, and now that you can move into it, that kind of thing has stopped. Ever since then, with White Widow and now Debris, they're really trying to reinforce the idea that if you're going to have the kind of strategy where you want to block cards off of your opponent's side, they want you to work for it. They don't want it to be something that you could just suddenly just throw on the board with an on reveal. They're fine with things like Hood and then Viper it over, or Green Goblin Titania, because those take multiple cards and more energy. But something like on reveal with Debris was just too free and easy, especially when you can duplicate that up, you can copy it with Absorbing Man, or play it on a Wong. The kind of things that just didn't really what's the word I'm looking for? Make the other player have fun just because you might be. So now but let's look at the upside here. It's a 3-7. So what are we going to do with a 3-7 that makes 2 rocks? My first thought was Patriot or Zoo, any kind of strategy where you want to put multiple things on the board really fast and then buff them. The rocks themselves are going to be 1-0s, but because they're 1s, they can be buffed with Marvel Boy or Khazar. You could also do some crazy kind of, I don't know if you remember those Deathbird decks, the ones that had Death and Mockingbird, but were discounted through cards like Squirrels, and then you'd use Killmonger to blow them up. You could do this with a 3-7 that makes 2 rocks. That's a lot better than a Squirrel Girl, that's for sure. It remains to be seen exactly where this is going to be used, but the idea behind this change is to make it more of a feels good when you do use it, and not just about shutting down your opponent. We'll see if that ends up being any good or not. My instinct is that when you put a 3-7 as a stat line, it's going to be pretty good. Like we used to, I remember last year we were clamoring for 3 5s, and here we are. Okay, so the next card is Misery. Misery was a 4/9 on reveal. Repeat the on reveal abilities of your other cards here, then destroy them. It's now going to be a 4/8. So this change makes so much sense. I think a lot of us have been waiting for this change since they buffed it the first time. Everyone kind of looked at the 4/9 and thought it was nonsensical because Misery was already good, and now that just made it even better. So going back to 4/8 kind of puts it in a more reasonable lineup for what it's doing. Personally, I thought the 4/9 kind of made sense because Misery was really only used in one specific scenario where it's like, okay, you want to play it on Hood, you want to play it on small things that you can blow up and copy, and it's not like it was being used in a lot of decks. So when you have something hyper specific like that, I don't think the power was a big deal. But I think that when we've seen is that the Victoria Hand deck in particular uses this way too well. So they wanted to kind of, just adjust the dial of that one just a little bit. They're not looking to completely kill the strategy. They're not looking to kill Misery as a card, but they're seeing that the 4/9 was a little overtuned, which, to be fair, that's what the instinct of the players as well. So if the players feel this way and Second Dinner feels they can make this change, no worries, then it looks like it's an easy move to make. My only question would be at this point why it took so long. But I guess they wanted to just be sure that this is the kind of thing that wouldn't hurt the strategy too much. We've gotten a couple new cards for V-Hand decks since then. So maybe they're thinking that with the new blood in the deck that things will be fine. Cards like Bastion or Moon Girl, not a new card, but new to the strategy, are kind of 4s that could take the place of Misery if for some reason this 4/8 is such a drastic enough change that we have to drop Misery from the deck. I don't see that being what's going to happen, but if it did, there are other things that we could be using. All right, next card, Cosmic Ghost Rider. So this is a good one. Cosmic Ghost Rider, 5/7. It used to be, 5/7 on reveal. Remove the text from front row enemy cards here, and it's now going to be a 5/6. 5/7 Cosmic Ghost Rider was in everything. We've seen over the last probably a month, maybe a bit more, that they've been taking a conscious effort at reducing how tech cards are used in Marvel Snap. They want you to still have access to tech, but they want you to have to work for it a bit more. It can't just be something you just throw into a deck just because the stat lines are fine or because you can compensate for the drawbacks pretty easily. Cosmic Ghost Rider is probably the newest card that they've made that doesn't fit in that philosophy. When you compared it to other 5s, a 5/7 that removed the text off of 2 cards was used everywhere. I've seen it mostly in that Werewolf by Night Merlin deck because it can afford to kind of spend a little bit extra energy, especially if you get the Once in Future spell going. But I found it in weird places. Even just this morning, I was playing, and someone was playing a move deck because of hot location, and for some reason they had CGR in there, and it took me completely by surprise. So 5/6. What does 5/6 do to this card? It makes you have to actually want it in the deck. Like at 5/7, it had just enough beef on it still that you were fine slamming it down on turn 5, but at 5/6, it sounds crazy because it's just 1 point of power, but it's a massive point. When you're on the almost last turn of the game, you want to be shoring up the strategy, you want to be shoring up your win, and 6 power is not usually enough to do it. The main juice that you get from CGR is from the taking off the abilities. That hasn't changed. He still wipes out 2 decks of 2 cards, but it's what you get in return for it, the 5.6, which now that they're changing it that way, it falls more in line of what they're doing with tech cards. A little less power, a little more cost. They want you to play them, but they don't want you to feel good about it. Does this mean that we'll be taking Cosmic Ghost Rider out of all the decks? I think we'll see it in less decks. I still think it fits fine in the Werewolf by Night Merlin stuff. Does it stay in the Zombie Horde deck? Probably not. I think I already saw some other decks taking it out to go more in on the Horde stuff with like Absorbing Man and Zombie Giant as your last couple turns. Yeah, I don't know if it still runs Cosmic Ghost Rider at 5.6. That we'll have to wait and see. That's another deck that, uses Merlin to get extra energy, extra spells, so it might still be able to fit it in. But, time will tell. Let's see. Our next card is Vision. This is an exciting one. Vision. This is a buff. This is our first buff that we're talking about. Oh, well, yeah. It's a 5. It used to be 5.8. You can move this each turn. It's now a 5.9. So I remember Vision being really, really great with like Thanos. Like, if anyone remembers, not even just like Thanos of recent days from like a year ago, I'm talking like old Thanos with like Lockjaw, where you throw a stone in, it would poof away, and then you'd get a 5.8 that you could just move around. Or I remember even coping with Vision. I think it was like early Hela, like when Hela was still reviving a lot of everything, and like Corvus Glaive just came out. And there was like this weird combo where you would Corvus Glaive and then bring back Hela and Vision, and then you could move the Vision off to play Odin again. And you wanted the Vision so that you would not accidentally clog yourself with Hela reviving everything on turn 5. Now, so Vision being a 5.9 now gets me excited again for that kind of stuff. I really liked being able to have some power that you could relocate in other areas. As we've grown to see, moving is very strong in this game. Even when you're not going into like move synergies, just the ability to like move around your power on turn 6 before clicking the end of turn is something that really helps with your cubes and winning games. The 5 cost on Vision is going to be tough, especially when you compare it to something like Werewolf by Night, who is basically fulfilling that same role, where you have a big power guy that you can move around on that last turn. Vision, you can just freely move it. Werewolf by Night, you need to play a card. Yeah, I know. But by the time you're at turn 5 going into turn 6, Werewolf by Night is definitely closer to Vision stats than not. So, are you going to run Vision? I don't know. But at 5.9, he's definitely becoming more of one of the better 5 costs. If you look at the stats of other 5 costs around the board, they're either, under 5.5 because they have some kind of on reveal effect, or they're like one of those ongoing ones that, grow in power, like Ronin or Devil Dinosaur. So when you have a 5.9, that's it's not dependent on anything like that. So maybe that somehow fits into these decks. All right. Next card, the first Ghost Rider. First Ghost Rider used to be 2.6. On reveal, discard the lowest power card from your hand. Remove that card's power from this, and it's now getting a buff to 2.7. So when this guy came out, when he first came out, I think he was even 2.5 when he first came out. But everyone was kind of excited about a big 2 that you could discard something small but also useful. Something like Gore or Iron Man, because it wouldn't actually take any power off of the first Ghost Rider. Now that that didn't turn out to really be that effective, I mean, I've seen people use the first Ghost Rider in like dedicated like kind of revival Khonshu sort of style decks, but it didn't really permeate into like the main discard archetype. It tried to spawn its own to not really the same success. At 2.7 though, you might not even need to worry about removing something that only had 0. you might be fine if it takes off 2 or 3 power off of the first Ghost Rider. Like, just playing, like, you know, effectively a 2/4 to discard something, like, this is crazy, but maybe Swarm, maybe this is another one of those activators. It could be a weird final turn discard Muramasa Shard from Dakin. That's only a 1 power thing. You can just play this as a 2 and just make sure one of those is discarded. Maybe it's like an alternate, you know, backup to your bullseye not being able to be played soon enough. So you maybe do some weird thing where you go the first Ghost Rider and then Grandmaster the first Ghost Rider. As opposed to what it could actually be useful for. It might, with 2/7, could be just enough that we need to get those kind of decks I was talking about earlier, where you discard Iron Man or Gore and then make sure that's like your one target that's discarded, and then you do things like targeted discard with Lady Sif to make sure that you're discarding Khonshu a couple times. Then when you play Khonshu, you've targeted specifically only Iron Man or Gore to be brought back. 2/7 makes it a lot better of a card to do those kind of strategies, because at bare minimum you're not losing out on power. You're playing probably one of the biggest 2s around. 2s don't usually get that big unless they're scalers. Okay, next card. M'Baku. Baku 1/2. At the end of the game, this jumps from your deck to the lowest power location, and it's now going to be a 1/3. Oh boy. Okay, so I don't really like Cerebro decks very much. They are a lot of power all of a sudden. You can count it out, but it just still kind of you look at the board and you go, I can't actually beat this. And Baku definitely helps with C3, especially because Lockjaw is also 3 power. So if you draw M'Baku early, you can send it back into the deck with Lockjaw, and then later on you'll just see it jump back out again into one of those locations that you weren't sure on. And with something like Cerebro, especially when you stack up Cerebro, Mystique, and even new card coming this month, Chameleon, you can have +9 on this guy. Like, that's crazy. You'll just have a 12 power M'Baku jumping out of the deck. Is this going to be a problem? I don't know if it's specifically going to be a problem, but it's definitely worth looking at. Like, this buff is probably one of the more consequential ones of this entire OTA, in my opinion. There's also, there used to be decks that would run like M'Baku Blink. So like on turn 6, you'd play M'Baku, and then since it was your last card played, Blink would shuffle it back into the deck, and then find you anything bigger than the one that you whatever's left in your deck, and then M'Baku would jump back out as a 1/2. And this is now a 1/3. So even every little bit of power counts, right? Especially on lanes that you're losing. That could be the difference between flipping a lane or not, right? So that could also come back into vogue too, right? It just depends on the rest of the deck composition and what we want to be doing with Blink. Currently, right now, Blink is in the meta. Like, there is that War Machine Storm Legion combo deck that is running Blink. It's also running Lockjaw. So like M'Baku could fit into there. And then on those games where you're not doing the Storm combo, it could just jump in and work out to shore up that Storm lane. Is that going to be a problem? I'm not too sure if that specifically is going to be a problem, but I'm actually excited to try that out. That kind of Storm lockdown style deck is definitely something that I like playing. So maybe that it finds a way in there. Next card is Fan Fei. 4/7 activate, move your other cards here to the right, and then now it's going to be 4/4 activate. Your other cards here get +1 power, move them to the right. So a little bit of a subtle change. It buffs them for 1 power and then moves them. It doesn't just move everything over to the right. I think this is their attempt at actually trying to make her better. It seems like a weird nerf, like on first glance, because it's like, oh, it used to be 4/7 and now it's a 4/4 on base. But I think they really have noticed that move doesn't really need like a critical mass of moves. It has enough stuff that does the moving. What it needs is the scalars need to be growing in power as they're moving. And so a lot of the good ones, like you're looking at Human Torch, you're looking at Dagger, you're looking at the new Spider-Punk, they all grab power as they're going, right? So like Human Torch doubles, Dagger gets +2 for each card in the other lane, Spider-Punk effectively grabs 4 power. The more power you stack on these guys as they're going, the faster they scale. And so Fanfei, I think, is their attempt to help with that, because now it gives another 1 power as they move. I still don't think this is going to be good enough, though. Like, it's hard to say this is a nerf when the card was already bad. When the card wasn't really used, you can't say it's going to be now less used. Like, it's not going to be any worse. Like, so they're going to try this. We're going to try and see if it helps at all. Personally, I don't play a whole lot of Move. I've picked it up over the last week or two to kind of learn how it works so that I can see, with all these new cards that we're getting come out for it. And Fanfei just would not fit in this deck at all as it is right now. The 4 costs on an activate is already a big ask, but when you're in a deck that's so tight on its turns, making sure that you hit your specific moves, you hit your activates, you hit your on reveals, you make sure everything kind of winds back up in the Madam Web lane and do it again. Fanfei just is too slow. This kind of effect, maybe even on a 3 cost, now we're talking, right? But at a 4, it does not feel like it's going to fit. I don't see it fitting into that specific type of deck. Now, could it fit into like the Hydra Stomper type decks? The ones that are like the smaller movers, the stuff like Silks, the things that are buffing because of the amount of moves. That's the type of deck that this might be more aimed at. But even then, we'll have to see if it fits into that. They're starting to get a little bit more support for that. In fact, this month we're getting a new card, Ezekiel Sims, that helps that strategy. So maybe that's what they were aiming for with this Fanfei deck instead of the other type of move. All right, and then our last card that's changed today is Hydra Stomper. 3/2 ongoing, +1 power for each time one of your cards move this game. It's now going to be a 3/3. So they're buffing Hydra Stomper. Hydra Stomper, I was, and still, not anymore. I was pretty low on Hydra Stomper. It took a while for me to see how it would actually work out. The thing about move decks is that when you have something so centralizing as Human Torch, you see that guy double and double and double every turn. Something that just grows in power by 1 for each move does not sound as exciting. But I have seen, especially after the last Grand Arena, where we had the Spider or the Ghost Spider champion, where she had a skill that did the same thing but +2 for each one, you can definitely see how it starts to stack up. So like I alluded to a second ago, Ezekiel Sims is coming out. He's the one that gets 2 power and moves whenever you place something on top of him that's stronger. We already have Silk that moves around no matter every time someone plays a card in her lane. We got Batroc. He jumps around as well too. Sam Wilson's shield. You can definitely make it so that you're moving like 3 or 4 cards a turn. And then by the time you're ending off your turn 6 with Hydra Stomper, you're going to have a massive guy. And that extra 1 might not seem like it's a big deal, but every point matters. So that 3/2 to 3/3 is definitely already making a good card and a good strategy even better. So is it better? Is it going to make it better than the classic move? I don't know. Probably not, to be honest. Like the classic move deck right now is probably you hear from a lot of top players that it's the strongest deck in the game. Especially when you can, bounce around Human Torch, make him 70+ power, and then play Juggernaut. Like those two together, absolutely disgusting. Does this Hydra Stomper have a chance against that? I think if you lean into what this deck does better, which is focusing on the amount of moves, because the way that you do that is with the smaller cards, meaning that you actually have room in your cost and your curves to play some tech. The move deck, the other one with Human Torch, has absolutely no time for tech cards. There's not even any space. Closest thing to a tech card is Juggernaut, which is really more of the finisher. But with the Hydra Stomper deck, you could run, Red Guardian. You could run Deafening Chord that's coming out soon, the card that everyone's jazzed about. You could run, Spider Punk in that deck, and that's pseudo tech in the way that it steals power off of stuff, especially for those things that are, counting on that power. So that is probably the critical advantage that deck has over the other one. So this, like I said earlier, this OTA goes live today, Thursday. This will be the one that we have now. We got this OTA a little earlier than usual. For those that pay attention, OTAs are generally the second and fourth week of a season, not the first. Glenn mentioned on the Discord that there's some internal stuff that they're dealing with. They have like obligations. I think they do like a retreat or something. I'm not actually sure what it is, but they have like a work week that they're focused on, and so they wouldn't be able to have some people taking care of the OTA at the same time. So they moved it up. They moved up the schedule. So for November and December, you're going to see the OTAs on the first and third weeks of the month. It just worked out that this is also the same week as the Golden Gauntlet World Championship. So will any of these changes affect anyone's deck for Worlds? I think that's the main thing that's going in my mind with all this. A lot of those cards, I'm not even sure if they would have changed much. Cosmic Ghost Rider losing that point of power might make some people take it out. Hydra Stomper gaining a point of power. He hasn't got like Ezekiel Sims yet, so I don't know if that deck really is like Worlds worthy right now. Fanfei, first Ghost Rider Vision, none of those really seem like they're gonna make it. M'Baku, surprisingly enough, I think M'Baku might be like the card that we see that got changed from this OTA the most in World decks. I have a feeling that he's gonna show up in C3. Other than that, this will be the OTA that we have for the next couple weeks. Like I said, we got 2 weeks coming before the next change. Any balances before then, we're gonna have to see how the meta develops around these cards or around the changes to these cards. All right then. So hopefully this will help you kind of get an idea of what like my first impressions of the changes were. I definitely, when I saw the OTA the first time, thought that there wasn't much going on. I definitely thought of it as like a weaker OTA than usual. But when you sit down and look at what's actually being changed, there are a few things that are getting buffed that I think could make a difference. So we'll find out. Think for yourselves. Like see what it is that you think is going to change. Look at them again. Like I urge you to take another look at this OTA and think about not just like the specific card, what changes with the card, but what decks it changes with, right? Because you might not think the one or power off or up does much, but if it takes it out of a deck, then what it becomes is what goes in its place, and it might just change the whole fabric of something. This OTA might be more impactful than we think it is. All right, well, I'm just pulling up to my driveway now, so I'm about to park. This is more of like a test for me. Like I want to see if this is the kind of thing that people would be interested in listen to me yap. I play, like I said, I play the game a lot. I have a lot of thoughts on this game. I write articles, but sometimes it's easy just to talk into the phone, right? So let me know, if this is the kind of thing you want to listen to more. I can keep doing them. I'm gonna have a couple of them coming up. And we'll just see. I got to drive home from work anyway. I might as well talk about Marvel Snap, right? All right, then. Well, thanks for listening, and hopefully I will see you next time.